change, but also because it is the worldwide launch of a short film which has been already nominated at the UN as the best short film for sustainability. And it took about 7 years to heat the water to the degree when it gets boiling. But finally, the author, Vasilis Zafiris, achieved it. He is our colleague from the Netherlands. He is a worldwide climate leader, works in cooperation with Al Gore. And before I invite him on the stage, I would like you to see his movie, and then I will have a question for him. So let's see the movie.
Turn on the news any given day, and you feel the world is ending. You may panic or feel apathetic. However you respond, you feel disconnected. And since the media say the world is ending, it must be true. But is it really? Think about it. How did we get disconnected? Did it begin when Copernicus said we're not the center of the universe anymore? When our love of science leads us forward into the Industrial Revolution, separating us from nature itself? You see, over time, man was put into the machine, losing touch with his innate drives and sense of meaning. And so, nature became an object of study, a vessel to fulfill man's needs, to take and use. But what are our needs really? We need safety, stability, vitality, food and sleep. These we have to fulfill every day. It's just a fact of life. We need to connect, love, value ourselves, and we need to feel that we matter. Ultimately, we need wonder, to explore, to take care, and of course, we need to give. Unfortunately, many of us do not know how to fulfill our needs properly, leaving us stuck in a cycle of deficiency and fear.
Hey, look no further. Keep it simple. Stop torturing yourself. Take a closer look at me. We're not that different, you and I. For me, growing and giving back happen effortlessly at the same time. I take from the ground and give back into the air. But you're mostly focused on the taking. When you learn how to fulfill your needs effectively, your higher drives occur naturally. So you need to take, sure, but doesn't it feel great to give back? See, living and giving can happen at the same time. It's only natural. It's in our nature.
So maybe you're not as helpless as you're made to think, because this is the first worldwide crisis you can do something about.
Come, Vasilis Zafiris on the stage. Vasily, it's an honor to have you here and to be the first who see your movie.
Thank you.
Can you tell us in one sentence what is the essence of this movie?
As you said, 7 years of thinking about making something very complex, very simple. The basic idea is that desperation of things that we cannot solve will actually bring us back into our lower needs, our deficiency needs, basically. And the real solution to working with big issues, from my perspective, is actually really addressing our lower needs in such a way that we can actually unleash our higher needs naturally. So instead of going into desperation, just realize when all these big things are going on, that what we really need to do is to find the courage to overcome desperation, to do what the flower does naturally, take for itself to live, but create something to give. It's just in our nature.
So what do you want us to do? What is the courage we really need to take after this conference?
Wow. I've seen so many things which, from my perspective, are about satisfying our needs. Because we really have two kinds of needs. We have lower needs and being needs. And the lower needs are just our everyday needs. We need to satisfy them. You know, like food and water and shelter. But many of our needs we actually mistakenly take for deficiency needs. Like when you think about it, for example, self-worth, if we don't fulfill that really, it becomes a deficiency need. And we need to have it in money or status or role or whatever. So just make sure, the main thing that we already do as coaches is that we help people work on their deficiency needs. And do that yourself as well, so you can liberate all the other things that you can give naturally. So that's what I want
Thank you so
want
much.
people to take away from this. Yeah.
Thank you. And Vasily will be around, so make sure that you meet him during the break and you ask more questions about the movie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The truth is, I think the newspapers are going to be have these big headlines saying 400 coaches imprisoned in the slaughterhouse, waiting to hear the end of the story. And you're not going to hear it right now. Wasn't that a great film? So it was the first day of a 3-day corporate session on storytelling, and I made this statement that to me seems very clear. Storytelling is a basic human need. And by the way, it is giving and taking. And the people who look back at me, these corporate types, they kind of went, well, whatever. Storytelling, a basic human. They didn't get it. I tried to explain a little bit, but I just felt there was something missing. That night, at about 11 o'clock, I was finishing up my notes for the next day, trying to figure out how I could really make it real for them. And finished that piece, having my last cup of tea, having my last little TED fix. It's a late night pastime for me. You know, I finish work and then I watch a little TED show. You know. So the next thing I hear this enormous bang and a scream, and I ran upstairs to find my youngest child, who at the time was about 6 years old, had fallen from the top bunk and landed on his head on the ground. And he's on the floor holding his hand like this, going, just screaming his head off, screaming and screaming. My partner and I are looking at him and, you know, are you okay? Did you land on your head? What happened? 20 minutes later, he still had his hands on his eyes and he was screaming. I'd been calling the, various nurses, my sister, my mother, whoever. Couldn't get through to anybody. And we made the decision to just take him to the hospital. Got his hands on his head. He's screaming and he's like, I can't see, I can't see. I thought this morning, can I tell another story about taking a kid to a hospital? But, you know, I reckon having 4 sons, I've got so many stories about kids going to hospitals. Anyway, we put him in the car and we start driving to the hospital, and he doesn't take his hands off his eyes. Now, this kid wears spectacles, different son, by the way, but he wears spectacles. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what has he done to his sight? And, you know, and I'm saying to him, can you see the lights out the window? And he's like, well, my eyes hurt, I can't see. My partner turns around to me and goes, ask him logic questions. And I'm like, it's midnight, it's me, logic, please. So we're driving along, he's got his hands on his eyes, he's crying, crying, crying. And about 25 minutes later, we pull into the hospital, and he just goes like this, and he goes, ooh, an ambulance. And I said, yeah, we're at the hospital. He goes, oh, there's another ambulance. I said, yeah. You ready to get out of the car? Yeah. I said to him, how's your head? Fine. Well, is anything hurting you? No. I'm thinking he's like confused. Can you see? Oh yeah, there's another ambulance. Is your leg sore? No. Is your hand sore? No. Is your shoulder sore? No. Is your head sore? No. I said, well, should we go home? No, 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 no. I want to see the doctor. So I said, okay. So we go into the hospital, and I'm thinking like, I don't know, his concussion or something. This just doesn't make any sense. And we go through triage, and he said, we say, you know, he just fell off the top bunk. He landed on his head. He said his head was sore, you know, and we're standing waiting. I said to him, sweetie, is something hurting you? He goes, no. Your tummy, no. Your shoulder, no. Your head, no. I said to him, so why do you want to see the doctor? And he said to me, because I want to tell her what happened. So the very next morning, which turned out to be only about 3 hours later by the time we got back from the hospital, where they said, by the way, he was fine and more awake and healthy than the nurse and doctor were. I went into my workshop with my corporate people and I said to them, remember I told you yesterday about storytelling being a basic human need? I've got a story for you. So, you know, when we decided to go through this whole experience and ask people to share stories, I was pretty confident and I told the team, people will want to share their story. And underneath it I thought, oh God, please, I hope this works, that people will really want to share their story. We were inundated with people wanting to share their story. It's been so moving for all of the Story Scouts and for the team, the editors and myself. And even a little surprising with some of the films that we ended up collecting. So before we go in to see what happened to the princess, and again, it unfortunately will not be the end of the story, or not unfortunately at all actually, we've got ways and tricks to keep you here till the very last moment. I'd just like to show you some of the stories that were shared.
One of the challenges that I faced is a mental obstacle, fear of flying, and that was present for many, many years. There was a point in my life when I actually refused to fly, and it meant that I was separated from my family, living in California, and most of my family being on the other side of the country. And I actually came to feel like I was really imprisoned by this fear. I would have dreams about waking up. In my dream, I would somehow be somewhere else in the world, a place that I couldn't get to without flying. It would be like magic, and I was so happy, and I would wake up and realize that I actually was kind of trapped because I was choosing my fear and choosing to let a past trauma make choices about what was possible in the future. And so, one day I decided that I was willing to tolerate extreme levels of physical discomfort and mental anxiety if it meant that I was going to open the possibility of my future, that it was more important to choose being able to see my family, being able to see new parts of the world, being able to travel for work, that I was going to choose the meaning over trying to avoid the discomfort. And that's, in the first few times I flew, it was awful, panic attacks, and now I travel, I'm on planes at least once a week. I still don't like it, but every time I get uncomfortable or any fear comes up, I think about how I would rather have a life that includes this discomfort and all that comes from it, all the good things that come from it, than a life where I'm trying to protect myself from that discomfort, because at the end of the day, what you avoid, you strengthen. And anything that you feel you are not adequate to handle ends up defining your life rather than being able to get rid of it. So my advice to you is, as you face an obstacle, if there is something, some inner experience or outer experience you feel like you just can't handle, to shift your focus and look at what you can approach that has some meaning or value, and trust yourself to handle whatever discomfort or distress is on that path.
Before you get rejected by publishers, you get rejected by agents. That other people matter, that you really do need each other's support. You can't just go it alone.
Was the car accident 4 years ago, which pushed me totally out of life for 2 weeks. I do not remember myself for 2 weeks at the age of 50 plus, and start to learn to sit, to work, to walk.
I believe that I'm not enough good. Everything, in my life, it's because of this situation.
I need to speak in English, and I many times feel awkward. I feel that my self-esteem was not good enough because I couldn't express myself. And if I keep doing that, and if I keep playing a small game, I will not be able to make a bigger difference.
I couldn't wrap my head around how I would show up differently in court in a way that would be effective. I was not in my thinking brain. You will be able to deal with it in a really effective way, that you have what it takes, you have the resources to handle the situation well, and just trust that.
I had depression and I was burned out. To be happy is actually not to wait for happiness, but try every day to create it.
I realized that I can't depend on somebody else's judgment. The future is full of possibilities.
Let go and trust, because you can protect what you love, not by pushing things away, but actually inviting them in, and believe your own strength.
My total belief, I was really sure that I am okay, that I am fine, that we come here to receive and to give. Trust yourself and trust the world around you.
Amazing stories, huh? So you remember where the princess was, sitting in front of this giant, terrified of waking the monster. Something must have inspired her. She opened her bag and took out the flute. This was the flute that her mother used to play for her, that she gave her just before she died. And she began to play a tune. It was a tune that she had played for the first time, just after her mother died. It was a very melancholy but deep sound that had somehow helped heal her and her father in those awful days and weeks after her mother had died. She began to play that tune. She actually hadn't played it for years. And as she played it, she looked at this giant, and she noticed a single tear run down out of his eye, his sleeping eye. And then she walked over to him and she began to caress his enormous head. It took a while, such a big head. And so that when he opened his eyes, all the fierceness and all the terror that she felt and that she thought she saw wasn't there. She said to him, "I see you are a kind gentleman. Would you allow me walk through your gate? You see, I'm on a journey." The giant stood up to his full, enormous, awesome size, and then bent down low. He said, "To see kindness in others is to trust yourself. You may pass through the gate." As soon as she walked through the gate, it was a brand new landscape. This time there was tall grass, there was a steep incline, kind of a wind in her face, and she began to climb this hill. When she was almost at the top, she felt an exhaustion that she really hadn't felt since the start of the journey, and she felt thirsty. And at the very top of the mountain, she saw a little house. She walked up to the house and knocked on the door, and an old woman opened it, to her delight and her terror. Delight that there was someone there and perhaps the hope of a place to rest, and terror because she was bent over and wrinkled and marked face, and her tongue darted in and out, and she looked at her with these piercing eyes as if she knew she was going to be there. "You need to rest. You may come in, but give me your flute." Her most precious thing. But she knew that she had no hope of continuing her journey if she didn't hand it over, so she gave her the flute. She walked into the house, and she lay down and fell immediately into a restless, fitful sleep. When she opened her eyes the first time, the old woman was sitting by her bed. The next time, it was a young woman. And then later she opened her eyes to see a skeleton sitting in that chair. She blinked in terror, and then the old woman handed her a steaming cup. She took a sip of this water, this liquid that somehow soothed inside her, and then she fell into a deep, deep sleep. When she woke up from this sleep, the house was empty and cold. There were no embers in the fire. It was as if nobody had lived there for years, and she had no idea if she had slept for days or weeks or months. She grabbed her bag and ran out of the house and ran towards the edge of the clearing, and then saw it at the bottom of the hill, the maze. And she noticed the light, that special, flickering, beautiful light that she remembered so clearly from her dream. And she ran towards the edge of the clearing and then suddenly stopped because this huge abyss opened up in front of her. And she was scared to jump over it because she could so easily fall to her death. You know that moment where you need to take a leap of faith? I know those moments in my business where I feel like I'm on the edge. It's happened a few times. Quite recently, actually. I feel like I'm on the edge, and down below is this deep ravine. And if I fall, I'm going to die. I'm going to crash and die. But I know if I lean off the edge, I'll probably, I know I'm going to fly. Like I feel it in my heart, I am going to fly, but I'm still terrified because that ravine is really deep. That's kind of like where she was at. You know that moment? Yeah. That moment where something so big is going to happen, but you wonder, is this really happening? Can I believe this? Is this the opportunity I think? Can I believe this? Is there something bigger than me? Is there something protecting me? Is there something out there that's standing for me? Or is it just me all alone? She was frozen at the edge of this abyss, not knowing what way to go. And then she heard the whisper. It was a little louder than a whisper this time. It said, "Explore the cave." But I did. Open the gate. I did that too. Descend the mountain range. Oh, I want to. I could fall to my death. And she was just frozen. Frozen at that point. Do you remember on the first day I told you about this little storytelling trick? We stop at the best bit. We will finish the story today, but we have so much in store for you between now and then. I want to tell you a little bit about that. So we're going into focus sessions right now, 2 focus sessions with a coffee break in between. We're then going to have lunch, and after lunch we're going to have a story share. The story share today is a little bit different. We are going to have our story scouts out and about as always, but today they're going to have a different role. They're not going to be with cameras and microphones. Today they're going to invite you to tell a story, and then they're going to help you find someone to tell it to. And your aim is to share a story, and it's a story, as you can tell, about a spiritual or belief-based challenge that you've had. Like the princess not knowing if she could take a leap of faith. When was that moment that you wondered, could you take a leap of faith? And the idea today is to take this story notion to the next level, to actually begin to tell stories in order to really create that connection, to create that engagement with the people around you. So our story scouts are going to be matchmakers today. They're going to help you find someone to tell a story to. And if you do that by yourself, that's great as well. So just your challenge during this half-hour story share after lunch is to find someone to tell this very specific story to. Remember, the story needs to be specific, a time and place. This is your story coach training, by the way. This is how you tell a story that engages people. And if you think about it, this is the ultimate act of coaching. You're creating a safe space within which a person can explore possibilities through their own experience and what that means for them. It's the essence of coaching, right? It's like all the core competencies in one. So this is what you're going to do in that half hour. After that, I'll be back here to introduce to you our final keynote speaker, David Peterson. I'm really excited about that. And then we're going to have a closing ceremony. Please don't forget to fill out your courageous commitment. You have a little bit of time now before the next session, and you'll have time throughout the day, and I'll keep reminding you. Was there anything else I needed to mention? Books, thank you. At the very back, we have this lovely library, and you have the opportunity to win a book. So there's going to be a lottery later today. So what I'd like you to do is go to the back, put your name, your card into what's provided there so that you can be up for the lottery to get one of these books. And during the lunch break, that draw is going to be made. So after lunch, you can also go there and see if you've won a book. Okay, have a wonderful day.